Hello, everybody, and welcome to the meeting tonight. Before we get started, I'm going to take a brief moment to review a few tools that are available tonight. The first is that closed captions are available for this meeting tonight. You can turn them on by clicking the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen and adjusting the subtitles there. You have been muted tonight so that we can hear from all of our wonderful speakers, but we do really would like to hear from you. So please enter any comments, questions in the chat box, and we'll be sure to answer them throughout the evening. And please get us started by introducing yourself in the chat box and let us know where you're joining from. This meeting is being recorded tonight. We encourage you to follow up with the recording and share it out with your friends afterwards. We'll be sending it out to you within a couple of days. If you require any in-meeting tech support or have any questions or join by phone and have a question for our speakers, you can send all of those questions, concerns to me at megan@wellingtonwaterwatchers.ca, and we'll be sure to get those over to you. With that, I am going to pass it over to Rahul to get us started tonight.
Thanks so much, Megan. Welcome everyone to this really important community meeting. My name is Rahul. I'm here from Mississauga. I am a resident of Mississauga. I've been here my whole life, and I get to work with newcomers in Meadowvale in a cycling program. I'm also really proud to be part of the Stop Sprawl Peel campaign, the movement, and I also have a small grassroots group called Sustainable Mississauga. I'm here as well with Jenny. Jenny, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Jenny, did you want to do a short introduction of yourself as well?
Sure. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate all the support this evening. My name is Jenny LaForestier, and I'm a member of Stop Sprawl Peel, as well as a member of Stop the 413 and a resident in Caledon. I've grew up in Peel region, and I'm really happy to be here and to talk with everyone this evening.
So thank you so much, Jenny. Before we continue through the agenda for today, we'd like to do a land acknowledgement, and we'd also like to talk a little bit about some next steps. As many of us are settlers on this land, it is our collective responsibility to pay respect and recognize that this land is Treaty 13 land, the traditional territories of the Wendat, Huron, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit, whose ancestors continue to thrive as the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We must speak to the truth. We are here because this land was occupied. I also want to acknowledge the many people of African descent who are not settlers, but whose ancestors were forcibly displaced and made to work on these lands. In recognizing that this space occupies colonized First Nations territories, and out of respect for the rights of Indigenous peoples, it is our collective responsibility to recognize our colonial histories and the present day implications, and to honor, protect, and sustain this land. I remain committed to both Indigenous sovereignty and Black liberation as an ally, and I believe both are key aspects of our food systems and the environmental movement. These land acknowledgements, they're an important first step to reconciliation. However, they are really just a first step. I wanted to end this acknowledgement with a call to learning and a call to action. In the chat, you'll find a link to a tracking tool that was developed by the CBC, and it showcases the 94 calls to action presented by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. These calls to action are updated regularly to show where the government is and isn't making progress. And it's a great tool, not just to see where government can get involved, but where each of us can get involved. Us, our friends, our family, the organizations we know, and the places that we work. Let's take action beyond just acknowledgements. Please consider utilizing this resource and sharing it with those you know. Thank you. So now I'm going to pass it back to Jenny, and we'll talk briefly about our agenda for today.
Thanks, Rahul. So we have an agenda slide, which I think Danny is going to put up for us. Danny or Megan. So as part of our agenda, we've had a quick welcome, and I'm going to start next just framing the issue of what's going on in Peel region. And then we have several expert speakers tonight that we're thrilled to welcome and thrilled that they have agreed to come to this meeting and talk to all of you. Then we're going to have a take action, and Mike Bockwell will come on and we will talk about what we can all do to deal with what's going on in Peel right now. And then we'll have a fundraising portion and then finally a closing and musical performance.
Fantastic. I'm so excited for everyone here. We're already just shy of 100 participants. So without further ado, I will let you continue, Jenny, as our first presenter for today. Thanks so much, everyone. Hang tight.
Thank you, Rahul. So I'm going to just start with a quick slide presentation. If I could have the first slide up. So thank you again for everyone for joining us this evening. It's an important night tonight because we have a problem that needs all the people power attending to fix it. Across the province, an issue has been boiling in municipal council rooms and communities. We're being pressured to unlock thousands of acres of farmlands for the next 30 years with little consultation or participation from residents. A pandemic is not the time to plan for 30 years into the future. While the public has been experiencing a health crisis, developers have been lobbying local councils to issue industrial rezoning on some of the last best farmland in the country. Councils have been manipulated to make decisions based on land needs methodologies, often without the public attending. These decisions cannot be overturned by a new government. But in Halton and in Hamilton, we have already seen what voices raised can do. Tonight, we're focusing on Peel region, and I hope as a resident in Peel myself, we too can speak up and change the conversation from planning sprawling subdivisions and highways to saving farmland, wetlands, rivers, and streams. Next slide, please. Saving 10,000 acres of prime soil in the Peel Plain is in everyone's interest. With global events threatening the world's food supply, we need to firstly recognize how fortunate we are to have the ability to grow local food. And secondly, we need to preserve and safeguard that land. Some call this land the White Belt. That's a color on the map. Actually, it's called the Peel Plain, a large swath of mostly flat land that helps provide cooling for the GTA. It's part of the larger carbon sink of the Greenbelt. This land is prime A1 soil, a finite non-renewable resource. The Greenbelt, the West Credit, and Humber River watersheds, many wetland streams are all connected with this land. The province has lost 75% of its wetlands since the 1980s. We've lost 2.8 million acres of farmland to urbanization and aggregate mining. We need this land to protect the Greenbelt, which helps protect us. We need to let nature do its job for climate mitigation, adaptation, and to preserve our food security. If we don't speak up, those lands are going to continue to be systematically rezoned piece by piece by developers and those that would help them pave over the last best prime farmland in the greater Golden Horseshoe. Encroachment on the Greenbelt from developers is happening already before the 413 has been approved, before the municipal comprehensive review has been submitted to the province, and before a draft boundary expansion has been appropriately consulted on by residents of the region of Peel. This land isn't being rezoned for affordable housing. It's being rezoned for international warehousing and e-commerce. We are literally destabilizing our own food supply for companies like Amazon and Walmart. We are all worried about affordability, the environment. We are all tired from 2 years of a global pandemic. But while we have been keeping ourselves and our families safe, we have been losing some of the best farmland in the country one piece at a time. The 413 highway is part of this sprawl scheme and is driving a lot of the applications to rezone land from prime agricultural to prime industrial. Heavy industry that will increase truck traffic and that the province hopes will excuse the ridiculous folly called the 413. We can't let this happen. We must realize the value of the Peel Plain. Next slide, please. So while the 413 is not built and it's not approved, and it's still under a federal impact assessment, The urban boundary expansion isn't approved. The sprawl is still just lines on a map, and we have a window to say no. We must remember that good food grows in Ontario, and we must keep it that way. The Peel Plain provides natural flood mitigation. Flooding costs millions per year. This past February, over 100 homes needed to be evacuated when the Credit River flooded in Brampton. As the climate crisis worsens, there will be more events. Why would we pave over land that provides natural drainage and flood mitigation? Next slide, please. This is a rendering a local Caledon resident did of the boondoggle we call the Caledon Ghost Train. Despite local municipal mayors in the province misleading promotional announcements and some self-congratulatory backslapping, the end story is that the train isn't due until 2051. Carefully worded promotion leads the public to believe that when they buy their new home in Caledon, it comes with train service. Caledon actually spent $300,000 to lobby the government for this train, while an MZO was sought and issued for the Caledon station development. The subdivision may be built, but for the next 30 years, the train station could be vacant land. Recently, Premier Ford made a major announcement with both the Mayor of Vaughan and the Mayor of Caledon that the arrival of the GO train would be accelerated. But as of yet, there are no approvals, there's no budget or any documents to prove that this is the case. Yet land surrounding the proposed GO train has been unlocked for sprawl. Next slide, please. Stopping sprawl in Peel region is about equity to nature. It's about food and water security for residents who live from the headwaters to Lake Ontario. It's about affordability. It's about, expensive McMansions and executive suites, which is a typical proposal for housing in South Caledon and North Brampton, which will not address affordability. E-commerce warehousing does nothing to improve our self-reliance on local food. If the Peel Plain and the Greenbelt are paved over, we cannot eat asphalt and we cannot grow food on the Canadian Shield. We must plan for a better future. We have many planning experts here tonight on tonight's call and many dignitaries who will speak to this and who will explain what we can achieve if we raise our collective voices. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jenny. A lot of information there because this is a very big issue and this is a lot of land. Again, we're talking about 10,000 acres of land. It's an enormous amount at risk. And so we want to continue this conversation and look at perspectives from across, not just the built up areas, but also the Peel Plain, like Jenny has so aptly said. So now we're going to have a chance to hear from a farmer. Actually, this is a video they've shared with us. So we will now hear from, my apologies, I'm getting ahead of myself. We will actually hear from Susan Robertson next, who is principal planner from People Plan Community. There we go. Hello, Susan. Susan has many years experience as a commissioner, public at large for the Niagara Escarpment Commission and as a planner with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. Susan, I almost stole your thunder there, but I'll let you take it away from here.
That's all good. Thanks so much, Rahul, and great job on the land acknowledgement. Hey, everybody. I hope you're all having a great evening. It is totally my privilege to be here with you, and it's super hard act to follow coming after Jenny. That was a great presentation, Jenny, so information dense. So I want to talk about one line that you said, Jenny, that really stuck with me was this idea of equity to nature. And so I want to talk to you about equality as it relates to Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians and what that means in relation to what's happening in Peel region and in fact across the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So my presentation is about who gets a say. Next slide, please. So really, tonight I want to talk to you about our communities, but also our relations and our responsibilities. And I'm bringing in this broader holistic focus with respect for the First Nations, tribal nations and Métis communities that surround the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the Great Lakes region since time immemorial. Next slide, please. And I'm going to start off by just unpacking for us a little bit, what is a treaty? And a really simple way of saying it is that a treaty is a promise. It's a legal written agreement where you come to terms and you honor the treaty in perpetuity. And treaties are signed across this country. I'm starting with the peace and friendship treaties on the East Coast. In Peel region, we're looking at treaties 19, 22, and 23. These are treaties that are signed with the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. They are the Anishinaabe people, part of the Mississauga Nation collective, and Anishinaabe means original people. So as Canadians, it's important for us to understand as part of this whole discussion here tonight, we're talking about land, we're talking about the environment, but what we need to remember is that this ties to treaties and our original promises, and treaties have been ignored and treaties have been broken. And we know this is coming to all our minds right now through all the things that we've had to endure the past year, discoveries of residential schools, meetings with the Pope going on right now. And so we're all treaty people, right? Like we say in the pandemic, we're in this together. Well, we've always been in this together for treaty relations, but that's ignored. And you know, we have a changing landscape beneath our feet as non-Indigenous Canadians, and that is the federally endorsed Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. It's also known as UNDRIP, but I don't like that acronym. It took 40 years to make happen through lobbying at the United Nations. So I refer to it as the Declaration. And further to the Declaration, Rahul also mentioned the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. And those are calls to action for us as non-Indigenous people. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk to everybody about, I'm going to go from treaties and now I'm going to move into duty. And we probably hear a little bit about duty to consult and accommodate in the planning world, right? And how does that impact why we're here tonight? Well, really, Aboriginal and treaty rights are protected under the Constitution of Canada, which is the highest law of the land. And it's under section 35.1. And, you know, really that section says that governments, they must engage with First Nations, and really they have to do that. They have a duty. The duty is on behalf of the Crown, and the honor of the Crown is at stake with respect to that duty. And the honor of the Crown is a really important term that I'm not going to get into right now, but the Crown has to act honorably. It is the Crown, and the Crown by extension is us as non-Indigenous Canadians. And so anyways, the whole goal behind this duty is reconciliation. We know that word. And it's really about making sure that we're not adversely impacting Indigenous people with the work that we're doing, right? And so that brings me back to what's happening, right? That's what's happening across the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And that regional and local municipalities, they really should have a duty to the decisions that the Crown is making them implement, because these decisions of sprawling in this way have fundamentally impact the treaties and territories of Indigenous people. Next slide, please. So, you know, my question for everybody here tonight is, where is the duty of the Crown in the growth agenda for sprawl? Do you see the duty? I don't see the duty. I don't see the duty enacted when we have too much growth too fast, right? Planning for growth in a pandemic, like Jenny has mentioned, for 3 decades into the future without meaningful consultation, what hope does that leave for reconciliation 3 decades from now, right? If we're planning on a landscape without meaningful consultation, what kind of duty is there if there is not public participation and public voice? And you guys are here tonight, and you're coming up against that, and that is amazing. Where is the duty when there is a dwindling role of the Crown in the environment? We're seeing massive cutting of environment perceived as red tape, and the cutting of environmental legislation like the pay-to-slay changes to the Species at Risk Act, reducing conservation authorities' role in watershed management. All of this effectively is taking the government out of the environment without consultation. This is happening being in omnibus bills, being snuck through in budget documents, hidden in schedules. This is not honorable conduct, and this is not what consultation looks like. And besides, all of this planning process is so outdated. We know that. It's not having regard for our changing climate. And furthermore, and lastly, it's an abuse of power on behalf of the Crown. And non-derogation clauses, which they've been using, are not allowed. And we've heard that from the Senate directly. Next slide, please. So the solution is, I'm so glad to be here. Speak up. Counter this growth agenda through the lens of reconciliation, because really this is what it's all about. We have to respect all our relations on the land, and that relates to the watershed. The watershed is the best way to approach this. And really we have to find a way through the lens of reconciliation to ensure that there is ethical space for Indigenous knowledge systems to be expressed. And that means making sure they can participate fully at the beginning of the project and not at the end. Next slide, please. So I just want to say, everybody, this is a reconciliation moment tonight. This is what this looks like. You know, I encourage you to continue in this journey of standing up for your community and your watershed and all your relations, and being a good treaty partner by taking your first step. You know your treaty, read up on it, connect to the land that you live on, meet your treaty partner, go to an event, connect, share your concerns with respect to what the Crown is doing. And lastly, you know, all of this is reconciliation. So thanks so much for the opportunity to present tonight.
Susan, thank you so much. You have done justice to following up after Jenny. So really appreciate your words. And we can't emphasize enough the importance of not just Indigenous knowledge and their history here now in the present, but also their voice and us learning from them and them having a real presence in this dialogue and this action. So, you know, unfortunately, we don't have Indigenous participants in our immediate speakers here today, but we are absolutely determined to continue to elevate their voice and continue to fight for justice, for land back, and very much appreciate how everyone is speaking to these issues in the comments. It really is great to see that dialogue. So please continue to share your perspectives in the comments. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we will be seeing a short video welcoming Rav Singh. Rav is a young urban farmer of color growing food throughout the region of Peel, which unfortunately isn't very common right now. Rav is from Mississauga like myself, Treaty 13 land, and she is the founder of Shade of Mitti. For those of you that know Hindi, Mitti means earth or ground. It is a food and climate justice organization, and I believe a link to her organization will be shared in the chat. So now please hear from Rav. Thank you.
Hi everybody, thanks so much for joining tonight. My name is Rav, I use she, her pronouns, and I am the owner and farmer at Shade of Mitti, which is an organic farm that focuses on food and climate justice. And I live in Mississauga, so and my farm is in Caledon. So I am traveling across Peel every single day, and one of the things that I absolutely love is we are one of the very few regions that has such strong and diverse urban centers and rural centers. I grew up in the city, and having the proximity to rural land has been extremely helpful for me and other young and new farmers from the city who don't have intergenerational access to land. And the farm that I'm at is really close to the border of Caledon and Brampton. And every year I'm seeing the development come closer and faster towards the farm. And that's really worrisome because I rent the land, so I don't have much decision-making power or influence. And there's very, very few incentives for current landowners to not just sell their land for development. And this is an issue that many young, new and Black, Indigenous and farmers of color are facing because most of the time they are renting land and there's so much pressure for development. So I have had to come to the terms with the fact that in a few years my farm will no longer exist, and that means my whole livelihood is gone. And I've also had to be really realistic about the fact that my whole profession may not exist in Peel at some point, and if I want to continue being a farmer, I'll have to move somewhere else or trained to enter a new career. And that's a real shame because the uniqueness of having both urban and rural centers within our region allows us an opportunity to implement really innovative solutions to all these issues our community is facing. Our motto for the past 2 years has been, we can't go back to normal because normal was not working for anyone, yet we are now falling back to normal. And this is our chance. We have spent 2 years talking about how we need to do better, and this is the perfect opportunity to finally try out some new and different strategies and techniques to implement new and creative solutions to our climate crisis, the housing crisis, and address mobility and connectivity issues within the region. So let's keep our promise and not fall back to normal, but use this as an opportunity to do things a bit differently. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Justine and I'm the coordinator of Peel Food Action Council. We are a regional initiative bringing together diverse organizations and stakeholders across Peel, working collectively toward a sustainable, secure, and just food system in the region. As food justice and environmental advocates, we wanted to come here today virtually to show our support and solidarity to this really important initiative and let everyone know that the urban boundary expansion will directly impact food security and access in Peel. This urban sprawl will cover prime agricultural farmland that could otherwise be used to support our local food systems and community development. One serious cause of food insecurity is lack of affordable housing, and in this day and age, our communities should not be choosing between housing costs and affording good, nourishing food. In addition to this, we need to address the inaccessibility of land and spaces to grow food in Peel and normalize the prioritization of food access in our region amongst developers. We need to invest in affordable housing along with investing in increased growing spaces and opportunities for urban agriculture in Peel to support food security and agency in our communities. It is so crucial that we come together to advocate for a better food system and envision greater opportunities for Peel's development that is in line with food justice. Urban sprawl is not the answer. On behalf of Peel Food Action Council and fellow food justice advocates, thank you Stop Sprawl Peel for having us and sending along our message to the community. You can follow us at Peel Food Council to connect and learn more about what we do. Thank you and have a good rest of your meeting. Bye.
That was fantastic. I think the different perspectives are so important to this movement. And if you in our audience or those of you watching this in post do know people in the agricultural community, the farming community in Peel or beyond who want to join us, again, stopsprawlpeel.org. Please do join this movement, and we could really use your support. Now, one Susan isn't enough for the day, so I'm really pleased to bring on board our next speaker. We have Susan Lloyd-Swale. Welcome. Susan is an expert professional planner who collaborates to create positive change and champion strategic policy, people, and organizations. What a beautiful way to introduce yourself, Susan. Welcome.
Thank you, Rahul, and thank you, Stop Sprawl Peel, for your leadership on this issue. So very important, and I'm so pleased that you're following in the footsteps of Hamilton and Halton, the wonderful work that's been done. So the official plan review is an opportunity for you to have a say in shaping your communities and how they grow. And we are facing huge challenges across the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Farmland loss, housing affordability, financial sustainability, and climate change. And these issues are all interconnected. And your official plan review is an opportunity to reduce these societal problems and deal with them. But is your municipality solving these problems, or are they creating new ones? Next slide, please. To solve problems like housing affordability, climate change, and farmland loss, we need to grow differently. So building in existing areas is more cost effective, and it makes better use of our existing infrastructure than sprawling on farmland. Building inward, also known as intensification, can create walkable communities. Density needs to be done right, though, with good urban design. There are many benefits to investing in our existing communities. Taxes can be lower because we're not extending expensive infrastructure as far. They can be age-friendly, they're more equitable. There's more access to services and accessibility for people with mobility issues. There's less isolation for seniors. It's a more social environment, really. We can also lower emissions, and it's healthier for us because we can walk and drive less. And more people in an area makes investment in transit feasible, and less farmland is paved over. So walkable communities can be built anywhere, but they require political will and citizen support. And that's why we need you. Next slide, please. So what's at risk if we get the next 30 years wrong? That's a whole generation. And it's going to affect your quality of life. Sprawl is bad for the economy. If people can't afford to live in cities where the economy is most productive, we all lose. I took that quote from the Globe and Mail today. Isn't that amazing? It's a great quote. Infrastructure for growth is expensive, and development charges for low density sprawling growth doesn't pay its way. It leads to higher property taxes for everyone. So building more low density housing on farmland requires us to drive. It increases greenhouse gas emissions and traffic. And traffic related air pollution we know is correlated with cardiovascular disease, lung disease, and depression. Paving over the green belt to build 413 results in the loss of over 200 wetlands, 1,000 hectares of wildlife habitat like forests, and 10,000 acres of finite prime farmland will be lost. We can't afford to lose more farmland. And that's why the OFA, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, the National Farmers Union, and the Christian Farmers Federation all advocate for hard urban boundaries. We are not alone. Next slide, please. So what's behind this vision of highway-led sprawl? Provincial policy. Low intensification and density targets, MZOs that expand urban boundaries without citizen input, high population forecasts, higher than the Ministry of Finance forecasts. They all make good planning almost impossible today. The good news is these targets are minimums. So municipalities can show leadership. They can set higher targets and they can keep those urban boundaries. They can hold on to those urban boundaries, just like Halton and Hamilton did. They both voted to support higher intensification rather than sprawl. And there are some great projects happening here in Peel that set the stage for smart urbanism, like the Shoppers World redevelopment that you've got going on and the Heritage Heights development project. They're both looking at making better use of your urban area. So there is promise. Next slide, please. And there's a significant opportunity in Peel to stop sprawl and build the housing we need, because we have more single family homes than we need in Peel right now. Currently, 80% of the homes in Caledon, I'm going to focus on Caledon right now, are single family homes. And 95% of those homes do not meet the housing affordability threshold. This is right from the Housing Caledon report. In Caledon, 70% of the population will be over 80 by 2051. So how is Caledon planning to provide seniors housing to support aging in place if they're just continuing to build single family housing on farmland that's not accessible? During the next 30 years, the existing homes will be back on the market, providing a source of housing. That's 14,700 homes. But that's why it's important to allow conversions of existing homes into duplexes, triplexes, quads, to ensure that our existing inventory continues to help us allow more housing within our existing urban areas. In Caledon, also 58% of the new housing built is planned to be low density housing. That's the target that your council has created. It's contrary to both the Peel Region Plan and the Caledon Housing Study that say rental and supportive housing is the housing that's most needed, not single family housing. So if Peel region and local municipalities fail to provide the housing people need, we fail the most vulnerable people in our society, and we risk becoming an unattractive destination for new immigrants, which could lead to a shortfall in population predictions, and then billions in underutilized infrastructure, in addition to all the environmental harms that I've mentioned. So we are creating a problem if we continue to build the kind of housing that is not sustainable. Next slide, please. So what's your vision of the future? And thank you, Victor Doyle, for this wonderful map. If we follow the path the province has set before us, the quality of life of future generations is at risk. Should your government condemn the region to higher taxes and uncontrollable climate change, or say no to sprawl? So I urge you to please speak up, demand a better future. The official plan review is your opportunity to have a say. Now more than ever, we need residents to encourage politicians to show leadership for the common good. Thank you.
Wow, Susan, I wanted to applaud because that was a really powerful presentation. Thank you so much for your perspective and some really hard-hitting numbers. You know, this is truly an equity issue, and this is truly about what kind of cities we want to have ready for future generations. I do not want to see the next generation have no choices here. It's really about choices and choices for people. So thank you, Susan. And we will now go to our next presenter. Please welcome Dr. Linda Lukasik. Linda is, the Executive Director of Environment Hamilton and a core team member of Stop Sprawl Hamilton, which I hope many of you know about because they are just stellar. Locally, Environment Hamilton has fought City Council against expanding the urban boundary since 2006. So they are not new to this. They've been at it for a while. And with Stop Sprawl and Hamilton 350, they of course were incredibly successful in November of last year in freezing the urban boundaries. So thank you for the work you've been doing, Linda, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Rahul, and hi everyone. It's so great to be here tonight. I just want to say how inspirational all the speakers so far have been. This has been really fantastic. So excited to be here, part of the efforts happening in Peel. So as you heard, my name is Linda. I'm a co-founder and I'm the executive director at Environment Hamilton. And I am a proud member of Stop Sprawl Hamont. And I call that a movement because it's, to me, that's what it's become in our community. It's become a genuine and a major mobilization of community members who care enough about the future of our city and the broader region that we are part of, that they have become actively engaged in the critically important conversation about how our city is going to evolve and grow over the next 30 years. And so I want to tell you a little bit more about the movement and how it emerged, because I think it's important for residents in every GTHA municipality to understand that profound change is really possible through grassroots community mobilization. It really is. We've lived it. We know it's possible, and I know that all of you are learning that too as you work. So I want to take you back to January, February 2020. Environment Hamilton was doing what we always do on key local environmental issues with climate implications. We were sharing information and knowledge and encouraging Hamiltonians to join us in taking action to help us to advocate for a climate resilient, inclusive future for our city. We hosted several webinars to explain where the municipality was heading with urban growth management and to engage and mobilize community to respond. And that first webinar, we entitled it, "Will Sprawl Take It All?" And this was in response to the fact that the preferred planning staff option at that time was to expand urban Hamilton into our remaining white belt lands, over 3,000 acres of prime farmland, wedged between urban Hamilton and our green belt. That webinar was soon followed by another session, and we got a little bit feistier with the title. We said, "Don't let sprawl take it all." And the community response to these sessions was significant, and it indicated to us that something was different this time around. Community members were paying more attention to this issue, and they were becoming more concerned about the threat of the climate crisis and the challenges associated with a provincial government that seems bent on doing all of the wrong things. The grassroots organizing exploded from there. That's the best descriptor that I have for it. We helped to get more Hamiltonians engaged and informed, and some of them stepped up to work to build a broader movement. And I want to recognize some of these people very quickly because I know several of them are on the call tonight. Nancy Hurst, Michelle Tom, Lily Noble, Zoe Green. They really became the grassroots mobilizing force behind the Stop Sprawl movement in Hamilton. And their work was amplified by Environment Hamilton and other local organizations like Hamilton 350, and Don McLean is one of those key players. Paul Shaker, a local planner who's been really supportive all along the way. And of course, you know, we've gotten huge support from Environmental Defense, Tim Gray, and of course there's Phil Pothen, our superstar lawyer, land with expertise on land use planning. We've had so much help and support from experts like Phil. It's been amazing. So this collective of organizations and individuals working under the Stop Sprawl Hamont banner was and continues to be a powerful example of what collective organizing can accomplish in a municipality. And I also want to note that sources of inspiration have emerged from outside of Hamilton as well. And that's been right from the start. For instance, Stop Sprawl activists in Hamilton collectively called for City Council to demand that the provincial government delay the 2022 conformity deadline for municipal planning to 2051. Oh, sorry, the conformity deadline. And we were inspired to do that through Councillor Jane Vogel. And Jane had already led the way in Halton region with a delay request. And right on the heels of those early 2020 Environment Hamilton webinars, we all started to work really hard to get more people registered to delegate and comfortable with the idea of delegating at key municipal council meetings focused on growth management. And we succeeded there in getting a huge level of engagement by encouraging and supporting other community members to raise their voices. Both written, pre-recorded, and live virtual delegations helped us to build the political will to support the serious exploration of a firm urban boundary in Hamilton, because prior to that, it wasn't even on the agenda. And that ultimately led to a municipal survey being sent out to every single household in Hamilton. And the overwhelming outcome, more than 90% of the respondents and over 18,000 people took the time to send the survey back, wanted a firm urban boundary for Hamilton. And finally, it got us one. In November of 2021, our city council voted for no urban boundary expansion as the pathway forward. So we got there. I mean, and it was amazing when it happened, really exciting. So I'm only scratching the surface tonight and telling the story about Stop Sprawl Hamont and all of the other organizations that work so hard in Hamilton. And I just want to highlight some of the key things that have been happening through the movement. And I know I'm sure you're doing all these things already, but I'm going to rhyme them off quickly. And Stop Sprawl Hamont actually has a great list of actions that you should focus on their website. So we found support from other groups. We've used social media in expansive and extensive ways, as all of you are. We've taken it to the streets with rallies and ways to raise awareness. We've worked to find councillor champions, and we've learned that getting that political support is really critical. Fundraising, of course, is an important part. And finally, I want to stop on this one, and that's the really important need to pitch a viable alternative vision for the future of your municipality. And I can tell you that now that we have that firm boundary, working on that piece has been critically important. So here we are with a firm boundary. We've now started to roll up our sleeves collectively and to figure out how do we really start to work towards that climate resilient, inclusive future for the urban part of Hamilton. And it's going to require supporting intensification across low density urban neighborhoods along nodes and corridors in our downtown core. So lots of work ahead of us, but it's exciting to be working towards a really positive effort to build a better place for everyone. And I want to close by saying that I am so thrilled that there is a movement emerging in Peel region to stop sprawl. And we're here for you. And I hope that you understand that in other municipalities, we're all watching and spreading the word and supporting where we can. we're ready and willing to help to amplify your calls to action. And we know that political boundaries between municipalities mean nothing in a climate emergency. We are all truly in this together in so many different ways. And that means that mobilizing to build a climate resilient, inclusive future for everyone in the greater Golden Horseshoe area and beyond is not only possible, it's essential. So go for it. People want to send lots of positive energy your way, and yeah, let's just keep on fighting. Thanks so much.
Linda, thank you. I feel like I want to do applause for all of our speakers, but I'll keep it tight. Really amazing, setting such a positive precedent at a time where, you know, so many negative precedents have often led to more bad outcomes. You know, we may be creatures of the province as municipalities, but collectively, all of our municipalities are the province. And I think there is great power to us working together. I think we'll see a link to the Stop Sprawl Hamilton and Environment Hamilton projects, campaigns, and you can learn from their success further that way as well. Thank you so much. We are going to continue the learning, this time coming back a bit closer to home with Divya Arora. Divya is one of the founders, hey Divya, of Community Climate Council, also known as Peel Climate Council, which supports community and youth-led solutions to climate issues in Peel region. Divya joined the David Suzuki Foundation in the fall of 2020. And let me just say, Peel Climate Council is an example of the best of millennial and Gen Zs just kicking butt and taking, well, I shouldn't say those words, but really taking councils to task. So thank you for the work you're doing with the team, Divya, and welcome to our meeting.
Thank you. That's a tough introduction to live up to now. But also just the speakers so far have been amazing. So I hope to be able to live up to them as well. So like Rahul said, my name is Divya. I am on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation myself. And I'm a community organizer with DSF, but I'm also a youth organizer. And that is how I started with the Community Climate Council. And I was one of 5 young women who started this group in 2019. And I think when we started it, we were all at the very beginning of our journeys of environmentalism and trying to combat eco-anxiety and our own climate despairs. And we wanted to do that collectively through action. But then as we sort of started getting deeper into the movement, we really realized that, especially in Peel, there is a new need for community action, and especially from young people. I think we began to reflect on the fact that a lot of people in power, but also just citizens, don't realize that by 2030 or by 2040, 2051, when a lot of these climate targets are being set to a lot of the folks that are making these decisions or that are in positions of power to influence these decisions, will be near or in retirement, whereas the young people will be just getting started, and we don't get considered in these decision making processes at all. And the ideas that we have for our communities and the ways that we want to grow up here don't really get reflected on in their decision making. And so that is why I care about issues like this and about other environmental issues, is because I am a young person that is currently growing up in Brampton, and I have this wish for my community to be a healthy, livable, sustainable community. And I think every time that I talk about this, it reminds me of this cartoon by Joel Pett saying, you know, all these world leaders at Climate Summit saying, but what if climate change is a big hoax and we create a better world for nothing? And I think that really drives home the point, is that we're trying to create a better world. So it's not the fact that we're trying to run away from danger. I think it's better to have a mentality that we're trying to run towards a just and climate safe future, which in my eyes looks beautiful. And that's something that we should attain for, regardless of where each of us as individuals stand on unfortunately polarizing subjects of climate change or highways or land use planning. So, you know, besides sort of having this environmental motivation, as a young person, I'm starting to navigate what my future looks like. And I don't personally want to grow up in a community that only functions as a bedroom community, because there is no place to work or play in Brampton. It's only become a place, unfortunately, where you come home to live, and you work in Toronto or you play in Mississauga or Toronto, and you know, that's sort of what it's become, and that's not the future that I see for myself and for my community, but also just affordable housing. I'm starting to learn about, how much it takes to afford a house, and learning that, there's these plans in motion that will not only make the problem worse, but are directly conflicting some of the solutions that can be proposed to make these problems better. It just feels very hurtful from the government to say that, we care about these young people and there's all of these messages, but then their actions directly conflict everything that they say. And I think the action is really what a lot of young people pay attention to, as well as sort of like the everyday stressors that we see our families and our parents and our communities face. Like people's basements get flooded and their property taxes are going up annually. And a lot of these cause issues for communities that we notice in just our everyday lives. And so I think, as young people in my group, especially, we reflect quite a bit on the fact that we're facing this problem collectively, and yet we're sitting in the face of it, and we're applying the same solutions that got us here in the first place. And not to speak on behalf of either of the organizations, but a key pillar of David Suzuki Foundation's work that I really gravitated towards was the fact that they're promoting sustainable communities, because data shows that consumption and life satisfaction will only correlate up to the point where people's basic needs are met. But popular media and whatever other channels promote that everyone needs to have the bigger car and the bigger front yard and the bigger houses, and that doesn't really do much for our life satisfaction after our basic needs are met. And so beyond that point of having our basic needs met, sustainable and healthy communities and community connections are really what sustain our well-being and our collective resilience. And because of the fact that the existing systems continue to force people to make choices about how we work and live and play that compromise our own well-being, it's very problematic. And it's also the fact that it compromises the ecological protection of our home and nature. And so I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. But yeah, I think as young people, from speaking on behalf of Canadian Climate Council, we really want there to be a zero boundary expansion, but beyond that, there needs to be consideration for smart, effective and sustainable land use planning to build communities where these young people will grow up and they'll be able to live in and play in and work in. And going back to the reason why we started the CCC, and possibly the most important reason that still drives me, is the fact that young people and vulnerable people in these communities are not being considered, and economic profit and personal interests are being prioritized instead. And I think that's really problematic for decision making just in the long term, because it's going to affect us all.
Fantastic perspective there, not just as a young person, but someone who's just very well spoken and thoughtful about the future of our region. I'm not going to leave you with too much more time to wait as for our next speaker, who is also very thoughtful and well spoken, a very powerful voice in this movement. Please welcome Phil Poten. Phil is the Ontario Environment and Program Manager for Environmental Defence. I hope you have heard from him before, because he has a lot of great insight to share. Phil is a Toronto land use planning and environmental lawyer with many years of experience serving homeowners, builders, developers, and architects concerned with neighbors and community groups in Toronto. So Phil, thank you so much for joining us here today, and always great to hear from you.
Hi, folks. Thanks for having me here. I think there's a slide deck that I've shared with folks. So I'm going to try and kind of keep a laser focus on the task that lies before you folks in Peel, which is stopping the current official plan draft, which would drastically expand the settlement area boundary. It would more than double the rate of sprawl and lock in that rate for 30 years. Peel region used around 483 acres per year from 2001 to 2019. And there are still 16,640 acres left. Only 8,698 were used in that amount of time. So again, the proposed boundary expansion would double that. It would add a huge amount of land to the current rate of the current area of land already expanded to your settlement area boundary. and it would burn through the land that you've already allocated very quickly. So the result would be that you'd bulldoze roughly 27,500 more acres by 2051. So we go to the next slide. So the key to defeating this proposal is in really picking apart where this boundary expansion comes from. The first thing to look at is that we're talking about 3,000 hectares of residential and 1,400 hectares of industrial and warehouse development. Next slide, please. So the other thing to keep in mind, if you want to be successful in beating this, is that it is the province that is intentionally trying to railroad municipalities into sprawl. So there are three main ways, upfront ways that this is being done in one sort of secret way. Firstly, they have put in place a GTA growth plan that forces 80% of residents, in effect, out into the suburbs, including Peel. Secondly, they are forcing the suburbs to swallow 30 years worth of land based on a certain method of calculating land need all at once in July 2022, which is a month after the election, rather than giving them time to adjust and make more efficient use of land over time. Third, they have imposed what's called a market-based land needs assessment methodology. So the purpose or the intention behind this methodology was to make it seem like the ratio of housing types that's required is locked in. There's an attempt to make the amount of land that's needed locked in as well. But as you see, Environmental Defense has worked with folks at Stop Sprawl Hamilton and Stop Sprawl Halton to crack the code. And I'll get into that. But the fourth is the sort of secret strong arm. Basically, we've cracked the code so that we've found a way that you can comply with the law while still preventing the government from getting its way, still avoiding a boundary expansion. And really that's meant that the government has resorted to a sort of secret behind the scenes strong arm, where they tell municipal governments that they need to extend their settlement area boundary in order to comply. And unfortunately, municipal governments and councillors and even planning staff end up being quite credulous and fall into a trap that any lawyer would warn you against, which is you do not take the government's word for what its own statutes empower it to do. And so if we could change to the next slide. So I'm here to show you how to stop the big sprawl and defy the government's plan while still obeying the letter of the law. And that's what you need to do on April 7th at your local Planning and Growth Management Committee meeting. So here are three ways to technically comply with the growth plan, technically comply with the land needs assessment methodology, and not get into a mess where you're told that you don't understand what you're talking about, and still avoid a settlement area boundary expansion. So keep in mind that they have come up with a projection about the number of single and semi-detached homes, the number of townhomes, and the number of apartments that are required. So it could get messy. You can certainly say that they've got that wrong, that they've overestimated the number of singles and semis that are required. But in order to really be successful, you have to come up with an alternative way of accommodating the same number of the same types of units in rough terms that they're proposing. So here's how you do it. Firstly, you've got to end exclusionary zoning, which means meeting a larger share of demand for ground-related housing within existing neighborhoods. And you do that by changing the zoning to incentivize more and more compact homes and not McMansions on lots currently reserved for single detached homes. Secondly, you've got to substantially increase your planned greenfield densities to accommodate all of the remaining demand that you haven't planned for through existing neighborhoods within the greenfield land, which is that area in pale yellow that's shown on your earlier maps. Massive areas of existing greenfield land that are already allocated for development so that you don't need to expand and use more. You want to increase it to densities of 90 or 100 residents per hectare, which is what you need in order to support transit. And the way to get there is through less parking and smaller homes. And the third point, which is often overlooked, is that you've got to really talk about the commercial side of things. And that means imposing actual standards for commercial and industrial development, rather, things like warehouses, just as we do for residential, rather than just taking builders or industrial concerns at their word as to the land use they need. So if you go to the next slide, I'll give you a sense of what we mean. So as I said, exclusionary zoning, I think you may have heard a lot about it recently. Frankly, in environmental defense, we're early to the field on this one. We were talking about this long before there were organizations like More Neighbors Toronto, long before there was any talk of the Housing Affordability Task Force, so-called, that was created. There are large swaths of land in Peel that are zoned in the worst way possible, which means that they are zoned to actually reduce the number of people who can be accommodated in each piece of land. But existing built-up areas can add as many homes as we want them to, including ground-related homes, by changing the zoning, by removing the legislated obstacles to adding more than one home to what's now a single-family lot, to get more semi-detached homes, more townhomes, and smaller single-family homes being built on a lot instead of having bungalows turned into McMansions. So it's worth noting that that garden and laneway suites, they all count as singles. So you may have heard of something called the Housing Affordability Task Force. Some of your local representatives may have raised some alarms about it, but it's very useful in this context because the task force, which is presenting itself as somehow speaking for government policy, has talked about the need to get rid of this exclusionary zoning as well. They've admitted it, despite the government kicking and screaming in the opposite direction for years. They've admitted that we need to get a lot more and more compact homes added to existing neighborhoods. So you can use the government's own words against it, and when you're advocating against sprawl, because if you build these homes in existing neighborhoods, you don't need to build sprawl. So number two, if we could change to the next slide. You can, so right now you're planning, I think, for something around 70 people per hectare in your new greenfield areas. And unfortunately, the staff will tell you that that's the most they can do. There's no way to get more in. But the reality is that the houses that they are planning for, single family homes they're planning for, townhomes and semis they're planning for, are much less land efficient than they could be, and that the model for increasing that land efficiency is very straightforward. So this is a townhouse development with 134 people per hectare. It's entirely low rise in this picture. And the way you do it is by, frankly, number one, getting rid of parking on site, switching to street parking like traditional urban neighborhoods, and reducing some of the setbacks. And also building, frankly, the type of housing that we built even up to the 70s, where the average house, single family home, was 1,050 square feet per unit. Now we're building homes that are much bigger than that. So if we build smaller, less expensive homes with less parking, we can easily get well above the 100 units per hectare, which are the bare minimum that we need if we want to have good transit and we don't want car dependency. So number three, next slide, please. So I mentioned, we can't just leave aside this thorny issue of how to deal with employment lands. I think there's a huge kind of tendency to treat employment lands as a black box. That's really what the staff report does in recommending the boundary expansion for industrial uses in Peel. But the premise of the staff report is, if we could go to the next slide, that industrial uses are going to continue to look the way they do in Peel, with no effort to actually maximize the job density, no effort to make developers use land efficiently. That's what they look like: large single or two-story buildings that stretch over huge areas of land. Amazon distribution facilities, Walmart distribution facilities, things along these lines. And the assumption is that because that's what a developer originally asked for, that's the only way that they'll be able to locate in Peel. But if you go back, could you go back one slide, please? This is another warehouse and distribution facility. It's 24 stories tall. And if you want to do that, so you can make perhaps not 24 times the density and efficiency of land use, but you can dramatically reduce the square footage you need to accommodate the same type of jobs, the same number of jobs as you would with boundary expansion, by changing the rules so you require developers to use land efficiently. I underline, this is not an office development. These are not residential high rises. These are warehouses that are being shown, and it's increasingly common throughout Europe, even in the US, and certainly in Asia, for this to be the standard typology. So these are the things you want to ask about. And so it's really important that you register on April 7th for the Planning and Growth Management Committee to advocate for these solutions in a fixed settlement area boundary. And I think there was a mention that it may be hard to undo things, or hard for another party to undo things, but also this provincial election matters a great deal. This plan, even if a bad plan, even if the municipality lets itself get railroaded into sprawl, there will still be a month after the election to cancel the current MCR and reset things with a new plan, which actually requires growth to be accommodated within existing settlement area boundaries. We know that that's the approach that's going to be on offer from at least a couple of political parties. And so even if we are not successful in Peel, the shift has to be to the election, to demanding of any candidate you want to vote for, who want your vote, and demanding of any municipal candidate next year that they will cancel the current MCR and require that all of the next 30 years of jobs and growth be accommodated within the existing settlement area boundary, both in Peel, but also throughout the GTHA. Thanks, folks.
Phil, incredible as always. Thank you for cutting to the solutions. People need to hear this. I need to hear this. And for some of us, like the first time I got to see this warehouse solution, I was shocked. And you know, I think we really need to realize that, yeah, it's not just about housing. There's a lot on the table that's spread thin, and there's a lot of ways we can densify, learning from our peers. So thank you so much. I hope you were taking notes like I was from what Phil had to share. We're going to continue right along. No, I'm just kidding. We're actually going to listen to some wonderful music now and have a break of sorts. So now we're going to enjoy some music by a musician known as 11 Darren. They are 23 years old and are a published musician with one studio EP released so far and more in the works. She was heavily influenced by classic rock in her youth and Canadian artists later in life. 11, which is, of course is the coolest name ever, strives to be a storyteller through song and hopes to play globally one day. So please enjoy, take a quick water break or bathroom break if you need to as well, and we will continue the final few speakers after the music.
Hi guys, my name is 11 Darren. I am a singer-songwriter from Hamilton, Ontario. I wanted to thank Shani and Megan for reaching out to me, and everybody from Stop Sprawl Peel who helped to organize this event, as well as my friend Nancy Hurst who shared this opportunity with me in the first place. Stopping urban expansion and saving the Greenbelt is something that resonates deeply with me, so I am honored to be a part of this event today, and I wish I could be with you guys in person, but hopefully we'll all meet soon. Without further ado, I wanted to play a song for you guys off of my first EP entitled The Incredible Inevitability of Life. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you so much. I've chased the sunlight up this hill. In a race against the moon, we'll see who will fail. Hit blaring in the background radio. Work day after show, time's really all that we know. This goes bigger than the legends, this goes bigger than the songs. Oh, this is the black coffee of human emotion. My sister and I, cruising satellite maps. We're near our old house, but we know our way back. The images here are from 2016. So there's a few new tenants that we've never seen. And you asked me, is this life's incredible inevitability? To set up camp anywhere and go on without permission from you or me. I said I think I found the incredible inevitability. Man, I can't wait to see life go on long after me. From within my sleeve I hear my Casio beep. Singing workday is over, so give me my release. The melody climbs up my legs and carries through my spine. And the Celtic knot I call my backbone dances to intertwine until I find this is life's incredible inevitability. Seeking refuge by relief, cracks in the concrete. I said I think I found the incredible inevitability. How far away you can be, and still I hear you so clearly. Well, Warren, I've had this cassette set aside for you for a while. It's actually a mix, thought a little bit of Whitaker ought to make you smile. And I made sure to throw a little bit of Denver on there too. I know your sister took you to a show when you were just a kid, and she said he could be life's incredible inevitability. This man we love deeply and will never know personally. You said I think I found the incredible inevitability. I must be a Venn diagram of my family tree, with my father's emotion and my mother's control. I've never been one to fear the inevitable. Thank you guys so much. Have fun today and keep saving the world.
Okay, I gotta applaud to that. I'm gonna do it quietly because I don't know how loud I am, but so amazing. Thank you, 11, for sharing that with all of us. Really wonderful. And thank you for those of you who are still joining us. So I see more people joining us. We have a few more amazing speakers and some activities that will continue after the speakers. I just wanted to also say, if you have questions, as some of you have had so far, please keep putting them into the chat or into the comments if you're watching this after it's been recorded, and we will try our best, especially our speakers here today, to answer. So now let's continue. We are grateful to have Sandy Shaw send us a message in solidarity for this evening. Sandy was elected to the Legislative Assembly of Ontario in the 2018 provincial election. She represents the riding of Hamilton West and Castor-Dundas as a member of the Ontario NDP. Sandy has been a member of the provincial parliament since 2018, as I said, and is the official environment critic in the Ontario legislature for that party. So please enjoy this message from Sandy.
My name is Sandy Shaw. I'm the MPP for Hamilton West, Ancaster and Dundas, and I'm also Ontario's official opposition environment critic. So it's absolutely my pleasure to be here with you tonight. I don't need to tell you, I know we all know that Doug Ford and the PC government have failed all Ontarians, young and old, when it comes to protecting our environment and taking action on the climate crisis. I mean, the list is endless. He kneecapped conservation authorities' ability to protect our waterways. He's basically taken away almost all environmental protections, out and out broke the law when it comes to our Environmental Bill of Rights. And we have seen this government issuing more MZOs than any other government in the history of Ontario. And these these MZOs are being issued on environmentally sensitive lands to allow development, like we saw at Duffins Creek and Ajax. We now have a government that's pushing through a massive Highway 413 and a Bradford bypass that really nobody asked for, nobody wants. And it's going through the Greenbelt and some of the richest, most productive agricultural land in Ontario. And we also all know that these actions are part of Doug Ford's land grab agenda to just ensure that land speculators and his connected donors, his insiders and his party members get their way in Ontario at all costs. And the cost that we are seeing is the impact on our climate change and sustainable development for future generations. So as the environment critic, it is so exciting for me to see people coming together across the province to stop sprawl and save farmland, because we know what's at risk. We know that it's virtually impossible to get land back. It is impossible. Once it's gone forever. And so this orchestrated land grab by the province has to end here. So what you are doing tonight and what you're part of is an incredible movement. And I'd like to say that it's a movement that was made in Hamilton. I'm so proud that this started here in Hamilton, and it's so rewarding to see this being picked up and replicated all across the province. This growing pushback is giving people the kind of hope that they need to see in the province, because we know we all want the same thing. We want to save farmland. We also want to see sustainable development. We want to see the kind of complete communities that we know are possible. That's the kind of vision that we want to put forward in the province of Ontario. We also know that it's ridiculous that in the middle of a climate crisis, we have a government that's making decisions around land use planning and development that doesn't in any way take into account the impact that's going to have on our climate in our future. People are asking for this. People want denser, more intensified communities. We know it's possible. We just need the political will to have that kind of a vision. So the energy and the momentum that we are showing here tonight and that we've been showing across the province coming together, this is the kind of vision that we need for the province. And this is the kind of future that we want to fight for generations to come. Planning for our future shouldn't be around what developers want, lobbyists want. It should be what the people of the province of Ontario want. And so that's why tonight and this movement is so timely, so critical, and so important. So let me say once again, congratulations to everyone here. Congratulations to Stop Sprawl Peel. We see you, we are behind you, and you are part of a movement that you can be proud of now and for future to come. Thank you for all your work. We really appreciate it, and go Stop Sprawl, go all the way across Ontario. Thank you.
Wow, that felt so much like Sandy was here with us right now. That was fantastic. Our thanks to Sandy, and our thanks next up to another fantastic MPP, a champion to stop sprawl. We are honored to have with us this evening Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party of Ontario. Welcome, Mike. Mike has been leader of the Green Party of Ontario since 2009 and is a true Greenbelt champion. Mike sits as a MPP of Ontario representing Guelph, and we are so grateful to have you here today. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks, Priya, for that fantastic introduction. And I can't tell you how inspired I've been by all the presentations tonight. I want to thank Stop Sprawl Peel for bringing us all together. And I want to be really clear. People-powered change can stop the sprawl agenda. It may seem tough, but I want to remind you when Doug Ford wanted to open the Greenbelt for development with Bill 66, people-powered change stopped it. When he wanted to build an Amazon warehouse on the Duffins Creek wetland, people-powered change stopped it. And it is going to be a tough battle. Let's be clear about that, because Ford has been laying the groundwork for the big sprawl since he took office. Eliminating the ability of conservation authorities to use science-based decision-making to protect our water. Gutting the Environmental Assessment Act, especially to fast-track his super sprawl highways, Highway 413 and the Holland Marsh Highway. Gutting the Endangered Species Act. Removing the ability of municipalities to protect their water from gravel mining, issuing an unprecedented number of ministerial zoning orders, bringing so much pressure to bear on municipalities to expand their urban boundaries, undermining and in many cases actually illegally violating the Environmental Bill of Rights. All of that is a systematic effort to lay the groundwork for a huge sprawl agenda that has to be stopped. And I want to be clear, when you talk, especially to people who live in rural conservative ridings, there is a direct connection between the Ford government's agenda to promote more gravel mining, sprawl, climate pollution, and flooding. So let's be very clear about that. And that's exactly why the Ontario Greens were so passionate about permanently protecting prime farmland, wetlands, and expanding the Greenbelt. It's why it's so vital that we build connected, livable, affordable communities. And I just want to say, if you're looking at Phil's presentation, please go check out the Ontario Greens Housing Affordability Plan and our climate plan, because it so aligns with the actions that Phil outlined. And I just want to close by saying how important the work you're doing right now, tonight and every day, to stop sprawl, because the biggest driver of climate pollution in this province is transportation emissions, and it's being driven by sprawl. So if we're going to have a livable, affordable future for present and the next 7 generations, we have to deliver the people-powered change to end Ford's sprawl agenda, and we have to connect with the communities across this province to make it happen, and take the actions that I know you're all outlining later tonight. So thank you for your fantastic work. It's so inspiring for me, and it helps energize the work I'm doing here at Queen's Park.
Thank you so much, Mike. You're energizing all of us. It's really great to hear so many in the political sphere showing their support and then their opposition to projects like the 413, like the urban boundary expansion. So really appreciate your continued work. And just like you are voting for the measures that we need, I encourage people to remember we do have a provincial election and municipal elections coming up. Use your voice, use your vote. It is so important for issues like this. Thank you again, Mike. We're now going to continue with Nancy Hurst, and this will be a video message that Nancy has presented for us. She is co-founder of a fantastic, successful movement you already heard a little bit about, Stop Sprawl Hamilton, Ontario, and a co-founder of Save Our Streams Hamilton, Ontario. Nancy has kindly shared with us a message of support, so please continue to support us and Nancy now.
Hello, Peel Region. This is Hamilton calling. I'm Nancy, and I'm one of the organizers of Stop Sprawl Hamont. I'm sorry I'm not there with you in person, but I'm with you in spirit tonight. We kicked off our campaign here in Hamilton to freeze our urban boundary over a year ago. And after countless emails, Facebook and Instagram posts, tweets and retweets, followed by delegations, declarations, rallies, and petitions, we had a huge win when our council voted no to urban boundary expansion in November. Then Halton region followed with the same outcome. And since then, we can't keep track of all the Stop Sprawl groups that are popping up. There's Peel, Durham, York, Orillia, Simcoe, and Oxford, all pushing back against this province's sprawl plans and demanding that our councils and our planners take our cities and regions toward a better path, a path that values foodland and recognizes that we are lucky to live in a region boasting the best prime agricultural land in Canada. A path that knows that since less than 5% of the Canadian landmass is arable land, that we can't afford to squander even another inch of this precious soil. A path that knows that housing affordability will not be solved by paving over farms, but rather by building compact communities within urban boundaries and close to jobs, amenities, and public transit. We must save our farmland, our wetlands, and habitat. Sprawl costs more than it delivers in so many ways. It costs taxpayers, and we don't want that burden. It costs us our food security, and we all know what happened when toilet paper was in short supply last year. It causes us our wetlands that are crucial to preventing flooding downstream. And it costs us our future, since sprawl equals more cars, more emissions, and more climate chaos. We're in a climate emergency, so no, turning 10,000 acres of farmland and watersheds and a bit of greenbelt thrown in for good measure into pavement for McMansions, warehouses, or highways simply is not acceptable, given what we know in 2022. So please, everybody, do whatever you can. Write those emails, call your councillors, attend rallies like this. Tell your neighbors and family members that there can be no compromise, no phasing, no increments, no boundary expansion, not now, not ever. Enough is enough. With the wind at our backs, we cannot fail. And if Hamilton and Halton can do it, Peel can do it too. The dominoes are falling and a new path forward for Ontario is beginning to emerge. Thank you for having me tonight. And I made you a short video. I hope you enjoy it.
Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Nancy. The support coming from Hamilton, from right across the region, is deeply inspiring. And we are going to continue to push those dominoes forward and create something so much better that won't collapse and hurt all of us. We have another friend, a neighbor closer to home. Please welcome Kim Bradshaw. Kim is the Government Engagement Team Lead, Director for Sustainable Milton, and one of the founding members of Stop Sprawl Halton, which of course has also just crushed it and already succeeded where we hope to go next. Thank you so much for being here, Kim.
Thanks, Raul. It's great to be here. I'm really excited tonight. We appreciate you inviting Stop Sprawl Halton. And I want to share how a dedicated group of ordinary residents saved over 5,000 acres of farmland. Stop Sprawl Halton really came into its own in late December, just last year, following Halton's release of its preferred growth concept and Hamilton's big win. Halton Hills Regional Councillor and avid climate activist Jane Fogel became a sort of advisor to the Stop Sprawl Hamilton group after meeting the organizers through the Stop the 413 campaign. She watched and knew how Hamilton succeeded, and that's what inspired her to gather a bunch of us together and try to pull off the same victory in Halton. Next slide, please. So, like Hamilton before us, Halton Region's default position was to bring in as much of the surrounding land, or white belt, as possible into the urban boundary to meet the province's mandated growth to 2051. Stop Sprawl Hamilton could easily be making this presentation, and it would be almost the same. The first takeaway from our presentation is that this process and its results can be replicated. So with over 5,000 acres on the line, Jane and Michelle Tom from Stop Sprawl Hamilton whipped up a small core team into a small Stop Sprawl Halton. Next slide, please. Getting organized, where to begin? Just as Hamilton had, we engaged experts. Water Watchers and Small Change Fund were first call. They had the expertise to raise and manage the funds our campaign would need to be successful. Mike Bockwell helped us define our goals, identify our tactics, and keep us on track throughout our campaign. Small Change Fund managed the incoming funds, paid the bills, and issued the tax receipts to donors. Then came environmental defense. We all heard Phil Pothen tonight. He rocks. There's just no other way to say it. He provided us with the essential legal advice about the provincial mandates and policy statements. He showed us it was possible to meet the mandated growth without expanding the boundaries. Next on our list was signs. Those came just around Christmas. We ordered them. They came in late December, early January. We wanted to make a visual impact in the community and to start to get noticed by councillors. Next was building the team. We had fantastic support from so many Halton grassroots orgs like Halton Hills Climate Action, Sustainable Milton, Burlington Green, Hasten, or Halton Action for Climate Emergency Now, Oakville Green, and that's just a few of them. Over 30 people from these orgs and others in Halton registered for our first volunteer outreach meeting. We reviewed our goals, and then we went into virtual breakout rooms defined by roles. Participants joined a room based on the type of work they wanted to do. Each group designed their work plan and assigned the tasks, and we established weekly meetings for both the core team and the larger team. And the different groups also had their own meetings as required. Next slide, please. As mentioned before, key messages. We quickly learned that sticking to a few messages would be critical. It is easy to get lost in all the information. You've heard so much of it tonight, and there are so many different perspectives when you get out onto social media. We knew we wanted to ensure that we spoke to the issues that meant something to Halton residents and that were easy to get behind and would move them to take action. We needed 13 votes of the 24 councillors at the region, and we knew that the majority of those votes resided in Oakville and Burlington. So that's where we focused. Don't worry about trying to convert people who cannot be converted. That's not where you need to put your energy. Focus on the councillors you can change, the fence sitters. And then finally, the timeline, we only had about 6 weeks to change 9 councillors' minds, and it can be done. Next slide, please. The tools, there's a lot of them out there, and everybody has their own favorites, but these are the ones that we used. So social media, mission critical, all revolve around various forms of communication, and because of course that's the crux of any campaign, getting the right message to the right people at the right time. Having some technically savvy volunteers does help, but more importantly, having many dedicated, flexible volunteers is the key to success. We found that using their connections and networks is a great way to spread the word. Visibility and numbers was the next thing on our list. So once you got out of social media and the web and MailChimp to keep all your followers informed, you had to get into group work like Slack, Google Drive, and Zoom to hold your meetings. Finally, the councillors, how do we reach them? There were letters to the editor, there were letters and calls to councillors, there were group endorsements, and there were also delegations. Delegations is an animal unto itself. You're going to want to make sure that you're actually actively going after people who cover different aspects of the fight that you're trying to win at council. So next slide, please. Key success factors, expert advice, champion counselor. I have to say, in addition to Jane Fogel, I wanted to thank Colin Best, another fabulous counselor who really supported our effort. Without Jane and Colin, this would have been a lot more difficult. So if you can get counselor 1 or more on your side, you want to work with them. Fundraising, doing it tonight. Hope it goes extremely well. I'm sure it will. Next is, as I said, visibility. Lawn signs. The other thing we used was pop-up rallies, and they're a lot of fun, and it gets volunteers out and into the fresh air, even in COVID. Social media, we talked about that a little bit. You want to keep the campaign positive. Try not to go down the negative hole. It's so easy and it's not fulfilling. Advertising, keep your key messages out there. We used radio. Let me see, I think I've got a list here. Yes, we purchased $5,000 worth of radio ads right before the council meeting. We organized a pep rally for February 15th with our lawyer, Phil Pothen, and the Environmental Defense to explain what must be done to get to the finish line. And we also included the United Farmers Union. Make sure the politicians know that the pep rally is happening. Continue to encourage delegations and make sure a large number of people show up for the pep rally. So right before that council meeting, those are the things you're going to want to do. Next slide, please. You can do this. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Citizens can change decision-making at council. Be in it to win it. No halfway measures. Don't compromise. Total awareness and quick reactions are required, and be fearless. Don't be shy about asking for help, and be bold. Expert help is essential for success and can be acquired. You guys can do this, and we're here to help you. Go for it.
Yes, thank you so much, Kim. We can do this. Now we have, of course, very tight timelines in Peel. It kind of snuck up on us, but we have amazing best practices to follow and champions like Jenny and like all of the incredible allies you've heard from today. So Jenny, let's talk about what's next. And we have Mike as well, Jenny and Mike. Let's talk about what's next. Great to see you both.
I just want to say my heart is full. I want to thank all of the amazing speakers tonight for framing this issue and coming online with us and explaining to folks who may not have been aware or have never heard of the MCR or what that is and what we're trying to ask for, which is a zero boundary expansion and save 10,000 acres. So thank you all so much. I'm going to hand it to Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Jenny. I'm very happy to be with you. It's been such an exciting meeting tonight. The two of you have done a great job leading tonight's meeting and getting us to this spot. Now, I think we've got some action we want people to take, right? And there's a slide we're going to put on the screen. And I just want to build on what we've heard from other people. It's very, very important to council that the community be visible. and that it show popular support for this. There's already the momentum, as we've heard from Hamilton and Halton, but they need to see it in Peel. So there's 4 actions here for people to take. And this is, the first thing is for people to sign and share a petition. And I think we're going to see a petition link in the chat box, if I'm right, so that people will have an opportunity to do that now in the meeting and to share that with others. The second thing is to register to delegate. And it's really important for lots of people to show up. And as Jenny said in the chat box, anybody from any municipality can delegate. And as we like to say, that, you know, the climate crisis is a global crisis, and none of us are global superpowers. The only way that we can reduce the climate crisis is by all of us acting in our own backyards and acting with each other. All of our backyards are connected. So it's completely legitimate for you as somebody who doesn't live in Peel to register to delegate at this meeting, because the food you want to eat in the future is going to come from the farm of Rav and other people like her. And so we have to be sure that land is there for her and the next generation of farmers. Third, you can send a letter to council. If you're not able to register to delegate, send them a letter and make as much public visible noise as you can. Those are all the actions I think we want people to take. Am I right, Jenny?
Absolutely. Those are the 3 key actions that we want people to take. And the message is to delegate on April 7th. That is the key meeting that we're focusing on right now. April 7th at Peel Region Planning and Growth Committee. We need as many delegates as possible to say that they are paying attention and they want a zero boundary expansion. There may not be a vote at that meeting, but it's where they're going to see that the tide has shifted and people are really engaged and don't want to see 10,000 acres lost to sprawl.
Now, Jenny, the other action people can take is make a donation to your campaign. And we're putting a link in the chat box, and your donation will earn you a charitable tax receipt, as well as earn you bragging rights to say that you're part of the campaign, the protected farmland in Peel and Stop Sprawl. So there's the donation link in the chat box, and I'm actually going to ask you to make a pledge right now to help us, help Jenny and Rahul out, because tomorrow, I understand that there's getting on the phone first thing tomorrow to say, what are they going to do to push this message and make it visible from now until April the 7th? And that's going to be, I think, Facebook ads and radio ads and newspaper ads, and that costs money. We heard it from Stop Sprawl Halton. They spent $5,000 on radio ads, which were very decisive. So tomorrow morning, Rahul and Jenny need to be able to plan with confidence. And so I'm going to ask you if you'll make a pledge in the chat box, and I'm going to ask it for you in this kind of way. I'm going to start with $500, and I'm going to ask who will make a pledge of $500 so that Rahul and Jenny can start to make a plan tomorrow. Now, I'm actually going to ask that more than one person will do that, and I'm going to ask other people to make donations. We're going to start at $500. This is kind of like a Zoom telethon. And I know, Jenny, that people have got to talk to somebody else who's in the room. They've got to check their bank account. They've been relaxing all night with this very interesting presentation you put. They've got to get up close to the keyboard. And so I'm asking you to help me talk here, you and Rahul, to help me talk here a little bit while we wait for somebody to make a pledge. Yvonne says we donated our provincial government license plate rebate to this cause.
Yes.
Hey, wonderful.
And Andrea says $250.
Oh my gosh.
That's terrific,
amazing.
Yvonne, if it's not too personal, tell us how much your license rebate was.
Cheryl making it rain.
We're all nonpartisan in this, and so I won't declare my background, but I did the same thing. I got a $230 license plate sticker, and I donated it to a candidate in my riding to help oppose Doug Ford that way. So thank you very much. And somebody's going to keep track for me here. 250 says Yvonne. Somebody's going to do a little math for us. So 250, 250, and 100 gets us at $600 if my math is right.
Amazing.
So is there somebody who will pledge $600 to match what we've got already? Because that would take us to 1,200. I'm hoping in the next 10 minutes we can get to $5,000.
Gail McLennan, thank you so much.
Yes, Gail, I cheers my water beverage to you, my blurry water.
Thank you, Gail.
All right, my hope is that, and I see Phil's put a request for delegation PDF in the box. I'm hoping that in the next 10 minutes, we'll get pledges of $5,000 to the Rahul and Jenny know they've at least got that much more. And yet, Rahul, keep your fingers crossed.
Let's do this. I got my toes crossed too.
Is there anybody who will make a $500 pledge? I'm listening.
Claudia says she'll donate 100 tomorrow morning. Thank you,
That's
Claudia.
terrific, Claudia. So we're asking for pledges now. In fact, if you can fulfill your pledge sometime in the next month, I think that'll be enough, Jenny and Rahul, right? If you know
Absolutely.
that in the next month people will fulfill their pledge,
absolutely,
then that will allow them to do the planning they need to do. I'm going to move from 500 to 300.
500 and everyone, thank you so much, Stephen.
Amazing.
That's
Maybe I moved too quickly there, Stephen.
$100
for the last 100.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Amazing.
Laura, thank you, Laura Campbell. Thank you for the.
So I think we're at $1,800, so we quickly doubled that. That's terrific. Here's a $100 license replay. Debbie,
thank you.
$23.50. That's this whole license plate refund thing. Doug Ford just didn't know he was putting all this money into funding the grassroots campaign to stop what he's doing.
Mike,
So
I'll just
I'm at-
throw in, I also got a private message for a $100 donation.
Elizabeth
right.
Evans has donated 200. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm at $27.50. That's terrific how this is coming in.
Has donated
And again, you can put
$100. Thank you.
can put a private message into any of us. Or ears must be ringing.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's a
terrific.
good
And
one.
his
He
ears
can
ring.
feel it. He can feel the Stop Sprawl groups.
Ron Corkum has donated 100. Thank you, Ron. Mary,
Thank you so
for
much, Ron and Mary. Incredible.
Thank you very much.
You know, I've been thinking that somehow we need to have like a Zoom abacus. You know, is it called an abacus where you move the little? We need some kind of online abacus where we can move those things across because they're coming in faster than I'm able to count.
Ryan,
Oh my goodness, Ryan, you are the
That's a
best.
good thing.
Thank you so much.
for $100.
You're recognizing some of these people, I hope.
Yes.
You know,
Yes,
some of them-
indeed.
Some of them I'm not. Some of them are new friends.
Let me say, strawberries love spreading. So I love that the donations are going viral right now. Yes, Graham, that's how we do it.
Well, Rahul, I think you're onto something here because spreading strawberries is the opposite of sprawling strawberries. Is the opposite
Strawberries
of
everywhere.
sprawling urban. Now, Grisha's got her hand up, and I don't know if she wants to ask us a question, and somebody can
Hi,
turn on her
Grisha.
microphone so we can answer. Because people who want to ask questions during fundraising, you want to hear from them.
Yes, can we
Can
unmute
somebody
Grisha?
turn on her microphone for her?
She's on now.
Go ahead, Grisha.
Is that us?
That's
Yes,
you.
it's you.
I wanted to put it in the chat, but I'm directly on to Stacy and I can't get out of it. We'll donate 500.
Oh my gosh,
Yay.
Grisha, you are loved.
It's
Appreciate
David.
it. Thank you so
David.
much.
Thank you, Grisha.
Well, that put us to 3,800 and counting. I think Kim might put us at 3,900. So the next $100 takes us to 4,000.
Thank you,
And
Kim.
Thanks,
Rahul,
Kim.
I just think this is important. You're saying strawberries, not sprawl. I'll
Yes,
skip you 100.
let's get the alliteration out there.
I think I'm spitting at the screen here, though. Strawberries, not sprawl.
Say it 5 times fast,
It's
Mike.
challenging for me. Well, you'll have to tell us how you a strawberry spreader. How did you?
Strawberry.
Strawberries.
Okay, who's gonna create the first meme?
All right, we've got
Oh
something.
no. Yes, thank you so much.
We're at $4,000. Now that's terrific. I just want to keep us here long enough to get to 5,000 because I know
We're so
Rahul and Jenny
close.
are going to sleep better. They're going to have $1,000 better sleep if they wake up tomorrow morning knowing that there's
Pat
$5,000 in
Vipon.
the kitty. And
Thank
that
you, Pat
amazing.
Vipon. for the donation of $100.
And you're doing it for future generations. You're the best. Thank you for
Nancy.
continuing the legacy. We love and appreciate our elders. Thank you for that donation.
Thank you, Nancy, for the $50 donation.
So much.
We're at 4150.
We have another hand. Stacy, can we unmute Stacy, please?
Stacy, you should be able to unmute now. There we go.
I'm unmuted. Grisha, David.
It's a neighbor waving.
Yeah, neighbor waving.
While we're raising funds, I can keep the conversation going just for a little bit, and then I have to leave the rally. So I want to say, I love the work that's happening in this mainstream environmental movement called Stop Sprawl. The work that I'm doing, my hometown is up in Bellefontaine and Alton. I spent 45 years living on and of that land. And I'm acutely aware that the Mississauga did not have that opportunity to live, earn a living, be on that land, love the waters, love the land, and care for it. We still occupy that land. We are greening settler colonialism when we're doing this kind of work. Our occupation of that land perpetuates and continues the erasure of Indigenous people. And we benefit from our occupation of that land. So when we're doing land acknowledgements, it's really important that we not only do we settle there, we occupy it. And as a direct result of that occupation, somebody else is suffering and continues to suffer. As we work with and work towards things like utilizing the Constitution and free, prior, and informed consent, when we're pushing the Crown to uphold that duty on our behalf, and as we're using UNDRIP, by the way, was heavily penned by Indigenous communities globally and named and adopted and supported by Indigenous communities globally, including many here from the Anishinaabe territories around Lake Ontario. As we continue to use it for our gain, we have responsibilities behind just using the laws that are there to consult with Indigenous people. And that is direct relationship building as a community, as individuals, and as NGOs with the inherent rights holders of these many territories. And I think it's really important that we look at what we're calling, there's not enough time to consult. All we're doing is punting it down the road to the youth to consult. And we have to start doing our duty and the hard work of relationship building with the inherent right holders of this land, especially as we're starting to use free, prior, and informed consent to help win battles in our own backyard.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank
Absolutely.
you for those great words. Who needs strawberries, says Mike.
Really, no, Stacy, thank you so much. And I've heard some of your perspective before. Stacy, did you want to add something? Because I think you're muted again. Please do. I think you're still muted, Stacy. Sorry.
I just want to say a shout out to Harvey. Thank you, Harvey, for that donation.
Go ahead.
I'm doing lots of heavy work with the Mississauga of the Credit First Nations in the process of putting together an extensive treaty partner workshop, for which we will be offering it up to folks within the Bellefontaine region. And if you are interested in a treaty partner workshop and working with the Mississauga of the Credit First Nations in true partnership building, I'm going to put my email in the chat. I'm going to have you email me and I'll save it and I will get back to you. Maybe not immediately because I'm currently going into writing a thesis, but I will get back to you. So thank you. Keep up this good work, you guys.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
We will absolutely reach out and really grateful for your perspective and really honestly giving these groups a chance because yeah, there's a lot of work we need to do.
I also want to say thank you to Dorothy who sent me a private message the donation.
Where-
And Tricia, is that an old hand or a new
I
hand?
didn't know David wants to say something.
Okay.
I was just interested, one of your speakers was mentioning, among other things, that the Ford government has done is that they have broken or weakened the 2007 Endangered Species Act. Other than the fact that they've ignored it, what have they actually done something that has changed that act? Do you know?
So I can speak a little bit to this. I don't know if Phil is still on, if Phil might want to talk to this, but I can tell you that what they've changed is called offsetting. And so instead of addressing the fact that a development application could have severe impacts to an endangered species, now developers are allowed to do what they call offset. Maybe Phil can explain this as well.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a matter of so much of the amendments to the legislation itself, but amendment to the creation of exemptions under the Endangered Species Act that exempt a lot of activities that, by the language of the statute and the regulations, ought to be prohibited. Secondly, it has not been realized yet, but there is an attempt to provide for what is called offsetting, like wetland offsetting, which would, well, sorry, no, I mean, to enter into the ministry has been approving agreements which allow wildlife habitat, in particular endangered species habitat, to be destroyed without actually determining that there will be anything done that will outweigh the harm to that endangered species. So a lot of this is happening through regulation, through exemptions, more than through legislative changes itself. There is a discussion of something called wetland offsetting. That wetland offsetting is actually relating to the Conservation Authorities Act, and that would be basically there's a prohibition on the face of the legislation and the regs, a prohibition on destroying certain kinds of wetlands, and there is an attempt by the government to create rules which would actually, despite the language of the regs, allow those wetlands to be destroyed, and on the hope that another wetland or another pond or stormwater pond will be created somewhere elsewhere. So that's not that itself is also not a legislative change, but obviously there have been big legislative changes to the Conservation Authorities Act that allow the minister to use an MZO to just completely destroy a wetland with little or no recourse under the Conservation Authorities Act to force conservation authorities to issue a permit. That's not the Endangered Species Act.
I want to say thank you, Phil, for answering that great question. And also thank you to Jay Scott for his pledge that I just received. Thank you so much.
I have another pledge of 100 in the bag. I received a message, so thank you again. And again, Phil, is always such, I don't know how you do it. You have endless knowledge and you are always here to explain to us what we need. I hope you get a week off after this is all said and done, which I know will not happen, but I'm going to say it anyways.
So Rahul and Jenny, it's 2 minutes to 9 o'clock. I think I'm going to just end the fundraising and hand it back to you. I think we're probably at around $4,500. Yes, that's just the message we just got. People may want, as you say, want to quietly make donations on their own. That I know that tomorrow morning you'll be able to make some plans now with confidence. And it's a real pleasure to be with you here tonight. I'm going to turn it back to you for closing comments.
Thank you so much, Mike. I want to thank everyone on the call. It's been so heartening to see so many of you, and thank you for our experts who have weighed in on this really serious issue. And Rahul and I definitely have some plans. Media is the big one. We decided for Peel not to do some signs because Peel is such a large area. We feel that we will have a bigger bang for our buck with media and newspaper ads and op-eds and that kind of a campaign. And we will be engaging with you all to ask for your delegations and your letters on April 7th. And that is the next target date that we'll be focusing on. We will also plan to do a workshop on how to delegate for those who've never done it before, and to just have a brief meeting. You can also join Stop Sprawl Peel Hub. We meet every 2 weeks. This is an organization of Peel residents in the region. We are engaged with environmental defense, and lots of voices there that we're trying to amplify on this big issue.
Yeah, Jenny, well spoken as always. Jenny is such an amazing human being, and the team is small here but mighty in Peel region. We could use more volunteers. If you know of an organization who would really support this cause, to delegate, to speak up, to join our meetings, please reach out to that organization, to your friends, your family, your workplace. A lot of people, you might be surprised, but once you have the conversation around how this will make our housing crisis worse, how sprawl will make our congestion worse, people start to change their mind. They start to take a second look and say, maybe expanding the urban boundary is not right. More than just the local food, that means so much, but we really want to think holistically and inclusively to how we can build a more equitable region. I'm so grateful to be here in Mississauga. I mean, I live with my parents. I have the privilege of that right now, but I want to give people choices in how they live, and it's about choices. So thank you for making the choice to support us. Thank you for making the choice to donate and keep donating. I've got way more than just strawberries, by the way. So I grow a ton of plants in my garden, making that grass into food. And I am happy to share that bounty with you. Really great to have you all here. Jenny, if you, did you want to add anything before I pass on to some more wonderful music?
Rahul, I'm butting in for just a quick moment because somebody in the chat box says, what's the deadline for registering to delegate?
That is an excellent question, and I will tell you,
I
believe
say the sooner the better, actually, because we already know from Carolyn Parrish, who's the chair of the Peel and Growth Committee, that she would love to see delegates sign up sooner rather than later. It just makes the clerk's life easier. And we know from experience with Stop Sprawl Halton in Hamilton, we had over 60 delegates, almost 60 delegates, which is a lot for them to schedule. So the sooner you can sign up, the better it is for all of us, so that we can have a fulsome meeting and get the time that we deserve.
Agreed. I believe the absolute latest is typically the Monday before. So April 4th is likely the absolute deadline, but yeah, please get it in sooner, because we also want to make it easier for them to allocate the time and approve everyone who signs up. You don't just have to speak. You can send in a message or presentation, call by phone. You have options. So please do consider delegating, and we'll make it easy through our website, stopsprawlpeel.org. Check out the resources we will continue to add there. Okay. I think that's it for now. Feel free to just surprise us with a $500 donation before we go. But I want to thank you all, as Jenny has, for your participation today. We are going to wrap things up with some wonderful music brought to you by The Lifers. They are a local art folk rock collective from Guelph. Guelph is just that amazing. Led by sisters Liv and Anita Cazola. I hope I'm saying that okay. They are sharing this lyric video for their song, Tip with Us Tonight, or TIP, a song which will remind us all what's at stake and why it's important we act now. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for donating. Sprawlberries for the win, and enjoy this music.
Can't be seen, just looking out your window. To believe, you must know you don't know. Empathy, cast so far away, crumbled to tiny degrees. I can barely conceive of just what that means. I'm making myself dizzy, untangling what's past.